Dust explodes beneath galloping hooves as bronze-tipped arrows slash through the air, striking men who never see the enemy coming. Egyptian soldiers drop their shields and run, screaming that the Hittites are already behind them. Chariots crash through the camp, trampling tents, bodies, and banners bearing the name of a living god. Pharaoh Ramesses II is suddenly alone, cut off from his army, surrounded by enemies who believe they have lured Egypt into the perfect trap. This is not a clash of brute force, but a battle of intelligence failures, deception, speed, and nerve. It is a moment when the fate of empires balances on wheels and reins, where survival depends not on numbers, but on reaction, leadership, and fear. The Battle of Kadesh is about to decide who controls the ancient world's most valuable crossroads and who will be remembered as master of war. In the late 13th century BC, the Eastern Mediterranean world was dominated by two superpowers whose ambitions were on a collision course. Egypt, under the young and ambitious Ramesses II, sought to reassert control over its lost territories in the Levant, regions that had once paid tribute to the pharaohs but had slipped from Egyptian influence during periods of internal instability. To the north, the Hittite Empire, ruled by King Muwatalli II, had expanded aggressively from Anatolia, building a sophisticated state that combined military innovation, diplomacy, and intelligence gathering. Between them lay the city of Kadesh, positioned on the Orontes River, commanding trade routes that linked Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and the Nile world. Control of Kadesh meant control of commerce, movement, and political influence across the Near East. Ramesses II did not see Kadesh merely as a strategic objective. He saw it as a test of his legitimacy. Early in his reign, he was eager to prove himself as a warrior pharaoh in the tradition of his predecessors. Monumental inscriptions, temple reliefs, and royal propaganda would later present him as a heroic figure chosen by the gods. But in reality, his campaign toward Kadesh was marked by haste and overconfidence. Leading an army divided into four major divisions, Amun, Ra, Ptah, and Seth, Ramesses advanced northward along the coastal road, relying on intelligence reports that suggested the Hittite army was far away, deep in the north near Aleppo. This intelligence would prove disastrously false. Muwatalli II had prepared the battlefield with care. Rather than confront the Egyptians directly, he concealed his main force behind the city of Kadesh, using the terrain and the Orontes River to mask his movements. Crucially, he deployed deception as a weapon. Two captured Bedouin scouts were deliberately allowed to fall into Egyptian hands. Under interrogation, they claimed that the Hittite king was far to the north, too distant to challenge Ramesses' advance. The pharaoh accepted this information with little skepticism, pushing forward aggressively with only the Amun division near him, while the other Egyptian divisions lagged behind along the march route. As the Amun division set up camp northwest of Kadesh, Egyptian soldiers relaxed, believing the enemy to be distant. Tents were pitched, equipment unloaded, and defenses left incomplete. Ramesses positioned himself confidently at the center of the camp, preparing for what he believed would be a siege rather than an immediate battle. It was at this moment that the illusion collapsed. Additional scouts were captured, this time Hittite agents who, under harsher interrogation, revealed the truth. The Hittite army was not miles away, it was hidden nearby, poised to strike. Before Ramesses could fully react, the Hittite plan was already unfolding. Muwatalli unleashed a massive chariot force, estimated in Egyptian sources at over 2,000 vehicles, though modern historians suggest lower but still formidable numbers. These chariots surged across the Orontes, smashing into the advancing Ra division as it approached the Egyptian camp. The attack was sudden and devastating. Egyptian soldiers were cut down before they could form ranks. Chariots overturned men, horses, and equipment, while archers fired at point-blank range. Panic spread rapidly, and survivors fled directly toward Ramesses' camp, carrying terror with them. The fleeing remnants of the Ra division tore through the camp, spreading chaos among the unprepared Amun troops. Hittite chariots followed close behind, bursting into the camp itself. Tents were crushed, supplies scattered, and Egyptian formations dissolved. For a brief but critical moment, the Egyptian army ceased to function as an organized force. Ramesses found himself isolated, his elite bodyguards struggling to form a defensive perimeter as enemy chariots circled and attacked. It is here that the battle's most famous episode occurs, preserved in Egyptian inscriptions that blend fact, propaganda, and self-glorification. According to these accounts, Ramesses personally rallied his guard, mounted his chariot, and charged repeatedly into the Hittite attackers. While the scale of his heroics is undoubtedly exaggerated, there was little doubt that his personal presence at the critical point helped stabilize the situation. The Hittite chariots, heavily loaded with three-man crews and designed for shock, had pushed deep into the camp in pursuit of plunder. Their momentum carried them too far from their infantry support, and their formation became fragmented as they focused on looting rather than coordination. As Ramesses and his guard held the center, relief began to arrive. The Naaran, an Egyptian allied force likely composed of troops from Amurru or other loyal territories, appeared unexpectedly on the battlefield. Attacking the exposed Hittite chariots from the flank, they exploited the enemy's overextension. Egyptian chariots regrouped, striking individual Hittite vehicles rather than facing the mass head-on. Horses were wounded, chariots disabled, and crews cut down or driven into the river. Meanwhile, the Ptah division finally reached the battlefield, bringing fresh troops and restoring numerical balance. The Hittite chariot force, now under pressure and suffering losses, began to withdraw across the Orontes. Mutawalli, observing from a distance with his infantry reserves, chose not to commit fully to the fight. The reasons remain debated: concerns over terrain, uncertainty over Egyptian strength, or satisfaction with having bloodied the pharaoh without risking everything. As the sun set over the Orontes, the battlefield fell into a tense stalemate. Both sides claimed victory. Ramesses proclaimed a divine triumph, crediting the god Amun with his survival and success. Egyptian reliefs depict the pharaoh alone against countless enemies, a narrative designed to reinforce royal authority and divine favor. The Hittites, for their part, retained control of Kadesh itself, the strategic objective that had sparked the campaign. In practical terms, the battle resolved nothing. Egypt failed to recapture Kadesh or reassert dominance over northern Syria. The Hittites failed to destroy the Egyptian army or kill the pharaoh. What the battle did achieve was a demonstration of the limits of military power in the late Bronze Age. Intelligence failures, logistical constraints, and the high cost of prolonged campaigning made decisive victories increasingly rare. Over the following years, both empires continued to maneuver diplomatically rather than militarily. Eventually, Egypt and the Hittite Empire would sign what is widely regarded as the world's earliest surviving peace treaty, formalizing borders and mutual defense agreements. The Battle of Kadesh, once presented as a glorious conquest, ultimately became a lesson in restraint, balance, and the necessity of diplomacy between equals. For Ramesses II, Kadesh became a cornerstone of his legacy, not because it was a true victory, but because it could be shaped into one. Through monuments, inscriptions, and state-controlled narratives, the pharaoh transformed a near disaster into a timeless image of royal heroism. For historians, the battle remains invaluable precisely because it reveals how war, propaganda, and power interacted in the ancient world, offering a rare, detailed glimpse into strategy, command, and human error more than 3,000 years ago.